Claire Montgomery stared at the anonymous letter on her desk, its words burning into her vision like accusations written in fire. Your employees are invisible to you. You have no idea what happens 3 floors below your penthouse office. You've built an empire on the backs of people whose names you don't even know. The 52-year-old CEO of Montgomery Hospitality Group, owner of 37 luxury hotels across North America, read it for the 5th time that morning. Her hands trembled slightly, though whether from rage or recognition she couldn't say. The letter had arrived tucked inside the quarterly report, slipped past her executive assistant, past security, past every barrier money could buy. Someone was watching. Someone knew. Claire rose from her leather chair and crossed to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle. 43 stories below, people moved like ants through Pioneer Square. From this height, everyone looked the same. Equally small, equally insignificant. She had spent 26 years climbing to this office, sacrificing everything, her marriage, relationships with her 2 adult children, any semblance of normal human connection, to build something that mattered. Montgomery Hospitality had started as a single failing hotel. Her father left her after his death. She had transformed it into an empire through sheer will and 18-hour workdays. Forbes called her a visionary. Business journals profiled her ruthless efficiency. Her net worth had climbed past $400 million last quarter, but the letter suggested she had missed something crucial while conquering the world. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman who looked younger than her years, thanks to expensive skincare and personal trainers, designer suit tailored perfectly, ash blonde hair styled in a severe bob that meant business, diamond studs that cost more than most people's cars. Everything about her exterior screamed success. Inside, though, something had been growing hollow for years, a persistent emptiness that no acquisition or revenue milestone could fill. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The letter had triggered something Claire couldn't dismiss. She thought about the employee turnover reports her VP kept glossing over. The workers' compensation claims her legal team settled quietly. The union organizing whispers her HR director assured her were nothing to worry about. What if they weren't nothing? Claire made a decision that would have seemed insane to anyone who knew her. She would go undercover, 30 days as a maid in her own flagship hotel, the Montgomery Grand in downtown Seattle. She would see what her empire looked like from the bottom, from the perspective of the people she employed but never actually saw. Her COO nearly choked when she announced the plan during their Monday strategy session. Claire, that's not how we gather employee feedback. Michael Chen stammered, adjusting his glasses nervously. We have surveys, exit interviews, HR protocols, which tell us nothing, Claire said flatly. People don't speak truth to power, Michael. They tell us what we want to hear. I need to see what actually happens when I'm not in the room. But the risk, if anyone recognizes you, they won't. Claire had already thought it through. I'll use my middle name, Elena. I'll dress differently, change my hair, wear glasses. Most of the housekeeping staff has never seen me in person. I'm just a name on their paychecks and a signature on corporate memos. The admission stung more than she expected. Michael tried one more objection. What about your schedule, the investor meetings, the expansion planning? You'll cover for me. Tell everyone I'm on a wellness retreat. It's not even a lie. Maybe I'll learn something about my own company's wellness. She smiled without humor. 30 days, Michael, that's all I'm asking. What she didn't tell him was that the hollowness had become unbearable, that she woke at 3 a.m. in her Belltown penthouse, surrounded by luxury, feeling more alone than she'd ever felt in her life. that her daughter Jessica hadn't returned her calls in 6 months, and her son Marcus communicated only through his lawyer regarding his trust fund. Maybe this was insane. Maybe it was the first sane thing she'd done in decades. 3 days later, Elena Russo reported for her first shift in the Montgomery Grand's housekeeping department. Claire had transformed herself remarkably well. Brown contact lenses instead of her natural blue. Hair dyed dark and pulled into a simple ponytail. Drugstore makeup instead of department store brands. Goodwill jeans and a plain sweater instead of designer everything. The woman staring back from her bathroom mirror looked tired, ordinary, invisible, perfect. The employee entrance was something Claire had never noticed during thousands of walks through the main lobby. It was tucked behind the loading dock, marked only by a faded sign and a time clock that looked older than Claire herself. She swiped the ID badge HR had issued under her alias and stepped into a world she'd never imagined. The break room was cramped, fluorescent lit, and smelled like burnt coffee and industrial cleaner. Metal lockers lined one wall, most covered in family photos and inspirational quotes. A bulletin board displayed schedules written in barely legible handwriting alongside safety reminders and a faded poster about workplace harassment. This was where her employees spent their breaks. This was the face of Montgomery hospitality behind the marble and chandeliers. "You must be Elena," a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a supervisor tag approached with a welcoming smile. "I'm Gloria Martinez, housekeeping manager. Welcome to the team." Gloria's handshake was firm, her manner genuinely warm. Claire found herself unexpectedly touched by the simple human kindness, something she realized she hadn't experienced in her own office in years. When was the last time someone had welcomed her anywhere? Everyone in her orbit wanted something from her: approval, funding, decisions. "Thank you," Claire managed, her voice sounding strange, even to her own ears. "I'm grateful for the opportunity." Gloria laughed, not unkindly. "Well, let's see if you still feel that way after your first shift. Housekeeping is hard work. Honest work, but hard. You're on the 20th floor today, 12 rooms to clean to standard in your 8-hour shift. I'll pair you with one of our experienced staff to show you the ropes." She consulted her clipboard. "Marcus will train you. He's one of our best, thorough, efficient, and he actually cares about getting things right. That's rare these days." Claire nodded, ignoring the jolt of recognition. Her son's name. A coincidence that felt like the universe mocking her choices. Gloria led her through corridors Claire had never seen, the arteries beneath the hotel's beautiful skin. These hallways were concrete and exposed pipes, nothing like the carpeted elegance guests experienced. They passed laundry rooms where industrial washers thundered, supply closets packed with chemicals and linens, and break rooms where workers grabbed moments of rest between brutal shifts. "Here's your cart," Gloria said, gesturing to a metal contraption loaded with towels, sheets, and cleaning supplies. "Marcus should be here any minute. He had to drop his son at the daycare." "He has a child?" Claire asked, then caught herself. Why would she care? 7-year-old boy named Daniel. Sweetest kid you'll ever meet. Gloria's expression softened. Marcus is raising him alone. His wife passed away 4 years ago, cancer. He works 2 jobs to keep things together. Here during the day, security at an office building at night. I don't know how he does it, honestly, but that boy is his whole world. Something twisted in Claire's chest. She thought of her own. Children, grown now and distant. She had missed so much of their childhood, always too busy building the empire they would inherit, but wanted nothing to do with. That sounds incredibly difficult, Claire said quietly. It is, but Marcus never complains. You'll see, he's one of those people who makes everyone around him better just by being decent. Gloria checked her watch. Ah, here he comes now. Claire turned, and time seemed to slow as she got her first look at the man who would change everything. Marcus Chen was 38 years old, though the weariness around his eyes added years to his face. Tall and lean in the standard housekeeping uniform, he moved with quiet economy of motion that spoke of exhaustion held carefully in check. His dark hair needed a cut, and his shoes were worn but meticulously clean. But it was his eyes that arrested Claire's attention. Despite the obvious fatigue, they held kindness. Real, uncomplicated human kindness, of a quality Claire hadn't seen reflected back at her in longer than she could remember. "Sorry I'm late, Gloria," he said, his voice warm with genuine remorse. Daniel's new teacher wanted to chat about his reading progress. All good news, thankfully. "Never apologize for being a good father, Marcus." Gloria smiled, then gestured to Claire. "This is Elena Russo starting today. Can you show her the ropes?" Marcus's gaze shifted to Claire, and she felt suddenly intensely seen in a way that made her heart hammer. Could he tell? Could he somehow sense she didn't belong here? But his expression showed only welcome. "Of course. Elena, nice to meet you." He extended his hand, and Claire took it, feeling calluses that spoke of years of hard labor. His handshake was gentle but firm, respectful. "Thank you for taking the time to train me," Claire said, managing to keep her voice steady. "I know you must have your own work to do." "We all help each other here," Marcus said simply. "That's how it works. Come on, I'll show you how we do things." As they walked toward the service elevator, pushing their carts side by side, Claire found herself studying Marcus from the corner of her eye. There was something about the way he moved, the precision of his gestures that didn't quite fit the position. He loaded supplies onto his cart with the methodical care of someone who'd been trained in systems thinking, not just manual labor. "How long have you worked here?" she asked as the elevator rose. "Almost 4 years, Marcus said. Started right after—" He paused, and Claire saw grief flicker across his face before he smoothed it away. "Right after my wife passed. Needed steady work with benefits. The Montgomery Group offers decent health insurance, which matters when you have a kid." "I'm sorry for your loss," Claire said, and meant it with an intensity that surprised her. "Thank you." Marcus's smile was sad but genuine. Lily she was everything. Some days I still can't believe she's gone. But Daniel needs me to be functional, so I stay functional. The elevator doors opened onto the 20th floor, a level Claire had approved in budget meetings but never actually visited. The hallway stretched in both directions, doors with electronic locks, carpet that needed replacing, lighting that flickered occasionally. This was her hotel, her flagship property. From her office it looked perfect on spreadsheets and quarterly reports. From here she could see the cracks. "First rule," Marcus said, pulling out a key card. "Always knock 3 times and announce yourself clearly. Sometimes guests forget to put out the "Do Not Disturb" sign. Last thing anyone wants is to walk in on something awkward." He demonstrated at room 2003, knocking firmly. "Housekeeping, anyone here?" After waiting 15 seconds, he swiped the key card and pushed the door open. The room had clearly been occupied by someone who treated hotel staff like servants rather than human beings. Towels thrown on the floor, bed sheets tangled, bathroom counter covered in spilled cosmetics and hair, room service trays left on every surface, food congealed and attracting flies. Claire felt her jaw tighten. Do people always leave rooms like this? Sometimes. Marcus's tone held no judgment, just acceptance. "Remember, we're not here to judge. We're here to restore order and dignity to the space. Every room we clean is a service to the next guest, but it's also our craftsmanship. Take pride in the work, even when it's thankless. There was something almost philosophical in the way he spoke about housekeeping. Claire found herself captivated, watching as Marcus demonstrated proper technique for stripping beds, folding hospital corners, arranging toiletries with precise alignment. "You're very particular about the details," she observed, struggling with the fitted sheet that kept popping off the corner. Marcus smiled, moving to help her without making it seem like criticism. "My father was a mechanical engineer in Taiwan before we immigrated. He used to say that how you do anything is how you do everything. If you're going to spend your time doing work, make it mean something. Even if nobody else notices, you'll know." "That's a beautiful philosophy," Claire said softly, struck by the dignity in his words. Here was a man society had rendered invisible, doing back-breaking work for barely above minimum wage, and he spoke about craftsmanship and meaning. When was the last time she had thought about her work that way? Somewhere between the first million and the 100th, empire building had become about winning rather than meaning. They worked together through the morning, Marcus patiently teaching while Claire struggled with physical labor her body wasn't conditioned for. Her back began aching after the third room. Her hands, accustomed to keyboards and pens, grew clumsy with spray bottles and scrub brushes. By room 6, she was fighting to keep up. Marcus noticed, of course. "Your first day is always brutal," he said kindly during a water break. "Your body needs time to adjust. Don't push too hard. Injuries happen when we're exhausted. Pace yourself." The consideration in his voice nearly undid her. In Claire's world, showing weakness invited replacement. Here, Marcus offered accommodation without diminishment. "How do you manage this and another job?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Gloria mentioned you work security at night." Marcus's expression grew careful, and Claire recognized the look of someone calculating how much truth to share. "You do what you have to do. Daniel needs things. Good food, decent clothes, books, activities. He deserves a childhood that isn't entirely defined by what we lost. So I work. It's not complicated." But it was complicated, Claire thought. It was devastatingly, impossibly complicated. This man was sacrificing sleep, health, any personal life to give his son normalcy after tragedy. And he did it without complaint, without seeking recognition or sympathy. Everything Claire had thought she knew about character and worth began shifting beneath her feet. As they finished room 12 just before the lunch break, Marcus's phone buzzed. His face transformed completely as he answered, the exhaustion replaced by pure, uncomplicated joy. "Hey, buddy, how's your day going?" Claire couldn't hear the child's response, but she watched Marcus's expression cycle through pride, concern, amusement. "That's my boy. Remember what we practiced about asking before borrowing things?" "Exactly. You're so smart. I love you too. See you at pickup." When he ended the call, the transformation lingered for a moment before professional composure returned. But in that unguarded moment, Claire had seen what love looked like. Real love. Not the complicated conditional version she'd offered her own children, but simple, absolute devotion. "Your son sounds wonderful," Claire said, her voice catching slightly. "He's the best thing I've ever done," Marcus said simply. "The only thing that really matters in the end." They headed to the break room for lunch, and Claire experienced another first. Eating a packed sandwich from a reusable container in a cramped room with people whose names she didn't know and whose lives she'd never considered. The other housekeepers welcomed Elena with casual warmth, making space at their table, sharing cookies from someone's home baking, complaining about problem guests in a way that was more humorous than bitter. Claire listened, absorbing everything. These people had built a community in the margins her company provided. They celebrated each other's children's accomplishments, coordinated rides when someone's car broke down, pooled money when someone faced unexpected medical bills. This was what she'd been missing from her penthouse office. This was humanity. And at the center of it, gently but clearly, was Marcus. People asked his opinion on problems, sought his advice, trusted his judgment. He had become an anchor for this small community, even while carrying burdens that would have crushed most people. "What did you do before this?" one of the other housekeepers asked Claire during lunch. She had prepared for this question. "Retail management. The company downsized. I'm rebuilding." Not entirely a lie. She'd started in her father's hotel's gift shop decades ago. "Retail's tough," another woman commiserated. "At least here we've got benefits. The Montgomery Group isn't perfect, but it's better than some." Claire wanted to ask what "not perfect" meant, but Marcus's phone rang again. His expression shifted from relaxed to worried in an instant. "Daniel's school," he murmured apologetically, stepping away to answer. The conversation Claire couldn't quite hear ended with Marcus's face drawn and pale. He returned to the table, and everyone's attention focused on him immediately. "Everything okay?" Gloria asked, maternal concern evident. "Daniel's sick. Fever. The school needs me to pick him up, but I—" Marcus's jaw tightened with frustration. "I can't miss this shift. I've already used all my sick days this month when he had that stomach thing. If I leave now, they'll write me up, maybe dock pay. But he's only 7, and he's scared, and—" The impossible choice played across his face. Be there for his terrified child or keep the job that paid for his child's care. This was Claire's company. Her policies, her system forced parents into these unbearable decisions. Before she could think about the implications, Claire spoke up. "I'll cover your rooms." Everyone turned to stare at her. The new woman who could barely keep up with her own assigned workload was offering to double her work. "Elena, that's—" Marcus's expression showed gratitude, fighting with realism. "That's incredibly kind, but you're still learning. It's too much." "I'll help her," Gloria said firmly, shooting Claire a look of approval. "Between the two of us, we'll manage. You go take care of your boy." "I can pitch in an hour," another housekeeper added. "Me too," said someone else. Within moments, Marcus's impossible choice had been solved by community, by people who had so little themselves choosing to sacrifice for someone who needed help. Marcus's eyes were suspiciously bright as he looked around the table. "Thank you. All of you. I'll make it up." "You already have," Gloria said, waving away his protest. "You've covered for half of us at some point. This is just returning the favor. Now go get Daniel before the school calls again." As Marcus hurried out, Claire caught his grateful glance backward. In that look, she saw something that would haunt her long after this undercover experiment ended. She saw what dignity looked like when the system tried to strip it away. She saw what character looked like when tested by impossible circumstances. And she saw, with devastating clarity, exactly how much her company's policies hurt the people she claimed to value. The afternoon pushed Claire beyond any physical challenge she'd faced in decades. Between her 12 rooms and covering for Marcus, she cleaned 18 spaces in 6 hours. Her back screamed, her hands developed blisters. Sweat soaked through her shirt despite the building's air conditioning, but as she collapsed onto the employee locker room bench at the end of shift, something extraordinary settled over her. Exhaustion, yes, but also satisfaction. She had completed something tangible, something that mattered in immediate, visible ways. How long had it been since she felt that? Gloria found her there, clearly impressed. "You kept up. I wasn't sure you would, but you did. That's rare." "Marcus made it look so easy this morning," Claire admitted, wincing as she rotated her shoulders. "I had no idea." "Few people do." Gloria sat beside her, her own exhaustion evident. "That's the thing about this work. Everyone assumes it's simple because it's invisible. But it takes skill, stamina, and heart to do it right day after day. People like Marcus, people who bring dignity to this work, deserve more recognition than they get. Has he always worked housekeeping? Claire asked, unable to contain her curiosity about the man who'd shown her more about leadership in 8 hours than she'd learned in business school. Gloria's expression grew thoughtful. You know, I've always wondered about his background. Sometimes I catch him doing things, organizing supplies, using some kind of efficiency system, fixing broken equipment with engineering knowledge that seems way beyond basic maintenance, talking about concepts that sound like, I don't know, project management or something. But he never talks about his past, just says he's grateful for the job and focuses on Daniel. The description triggered something in Claire's memory, an efficiency, an unusual competence, a quality of mind visible even in mundane tasks. Who was Marcus Chen before tragedy forced him into invisibility? And why did the question suddenly matter so much to a CEO pretending to be a maid? That night, in her Belltown penthouse, Claire Montgomery stood before her bathroom mirror and carefully removed the brown contact lenses. Blue eyes emerged, her real eyes, meeting their reflection with new understanding. She had spent one day as Elena Russo and learned more about her company than 26 years as CEO had taught her. She had met a man who embodied everything she'd lost in her climb toward success. Dignity, community, love that asked nothing in return. And she had felt, for the first time in decades, the exhausted satisfaction of work that meant something beyond quarterly earnings. Tomorrow she would return as Elena, would return to the 20th floor and the cart full of cleaning supplies and the invisible world running beneath her empire. But tonight, as Claire Montgomery, she pulled out her laptop and began reading every employee complaint filed in the past 5 years, every workers' comp claim, every incident report. She would learn what the anonymous letter writer wanted her to see. And she would figure out why Marcus Chen, a man with mysterious competence and extraordinary character, was cleaning toilets instead of running something that mattered. The next 29 days promised revelations she wasn't sure she was ready for. But for the first time in years, Claire Montgomery felt truly awake. Day 4 found Elena Russo scrubbing a bathtub with the kind of concentrated effort that Claire Montgomery had once reserved for hostile takeovers. The grout required a special brush and a patience she'd never needed in boardrooms where time was quantified in 6-figure increments. Here, time was measured in aching muscles and the slow transformation of grime into gleaming porcelain. Marcus worked 2 doors down, his cart visible through the open doorway. Claire found herself increasingly aware of his presence, the efficiency of his movements, the quiet humming that suggested contentment despite circumstances that should have bred resentment. "You're getting faster," he called out, appearing in her doorway with an approving smile. "By week 2, you'll have the rhythm down completely." Claire sat back on her heels, pushing sweaty hair from her face. Does it ever stop being exhausting? Your body adapts, but honestly? Marcus leaned against the doorframe, and Claire noticed the permanent tension in his shoulders, the physical cost of working 2 jobs. The exhaustion becomes background noise. You learn to function through it. Not ideal, but necessary. "That shouldn't be necessary," Claire said before she could stop herself. Marcus's expression grew careful. "Maybe not. But we don't get to choose our circumstances, just how we respond to them." He glanced at his watch. "I need to finish 2008 before lunch. The guest complained about the bathroom yesterday, so I want to make sure it's perfect." After he left, Claire pulled out her phone, the secure device Michael had given her for this assignment, untraceable to her real identity. She texted her COO, "Need employee file on Marcus Chen, housekeeping, 20 floors, everything. The response came 20 minutes later as Claire wrestled with fitted sheets that had apparently been designed by someone who hated housekeepers. Attaching file. Claire, his background is unexpected. Call me when you can. Claire waited until her lunch break, then locked herself in the women's restroom to read. What she found made her heart constrict with something between admiration and rage. Marcus Chen, age 38, bachelor's degree in industrial engineering from University of Washington, master's in systems management from MIT. Had worked for a mid-sized manufacturing firm in product development, rising to senior project manager before his wife's illness. During Lily's 2-year battle with cancer, Marcus had exhausted his FMLA leave, maxed out his salary advances, depleted their savings on treatments insurance wouldn't cover. When she died, he'd been left with a traumatized 7-year-old, crushing medical debt and a gap in his employment history that made returning to engineering impossible. The gap raises questions, one rejection letter had stated clinically. We need someone who can demonstrate continuous professional development. As if loving someone through death was a professional failure, as if survival was a resume gap rather than a testament to character. Marcus had applied to 47 engineering positions in 6 months, 47 rejections. Meanwhile, bills accumulated and Daniel needed stability, so Marcus had taken the first job that offered immediate employment and health insurance, housekeeping at the Montgomery Grand. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. That was 4 years ago. 4 years of a brilliant mind trapped in work that used maybe 5% of his capacity. 4 years of exhausting himself across 2 jobs to make ends meet. 4 years of invisible suffering in a system that is measured worth by productivity rather than character. Claire's hands shook as she read the final pages. Marcus made $6.50 per hour at the hotel, barely above minimum wage, despite consistently excellent performance reviews. His night security job paid $18. Combined, working 70 to 80 hours per week, he grossed approximately $60,000 annually before taxes. She made that in a day. The discrepancy wasn't news to Claire. She understood wealth inequality in abstract intellectual terms. But sitting in the employee bathroom wearing Goodwill clothes soaked with her own sweat, reading about a man she'd spent 4 days working beside, a man with more integrity in his exhausted smile than she'd found in 26 years of executive leadership, the abstraction became unbearably concrete. This was wrong. Not just unfortunate or regrettable. Wrong in a way that implicated every choice she'd made, every priority she'd set, every policy she'd approved without considering the human mathematics of real lives. Claire returned to the afternoon shift with new eyes. She watched Marcus work with the efficiency of someone who'd studied systems optimization at graduate level. He'd created his own methodology for housekeeping, a sequence of movements that minimized wasted motion, a system for organizing his cart that reduced retrieval time, mental shortcuts that allowed him to clean to perfect standards while conserving physical energy. He was engineering his own survival, applying MIT-level intelligence to scrubbing toilets. The tragedy was matched only by the grace with which he did it. "Elena?" Marcus's voice pulled her from observation. "You okay? You've been staring at that nightstand for 3 minutes." Claire blinked, realizing she'd frozen mid-dusting. "Sorry, just thinking." "About?" His expression held genuine curiosity, not judgment. "About whether the work we do matters," Claire said carefully. "Whether we matter." Marcus set down his spray bottle, giving her his full attention. "We matter, maybe not to the people who'll sleep in these beds, or the executives who'll never see this floor, but we matter to each other, and we matter to ourselves. The work has dignity because we bring dignity to it. But don't you ever want... Claire caught herself, but Marcus's gentle expression encouraged continuation. Don't you want more? Want to be seen for everything you're capable of? Something flickered behind Marcus's eyes. Pain, perhaps, or resignation. I wanted a lot of things, he said quietly. Wanted my wife to survive. Wanted my son to grow up with both parents. Wanted a career where I could use my education to solve interesting problems. He smiled without bitterness. But wanting doesn't change reality. What I have now is honest work that lets me be there for Daniel. That's enough. Is it? Claire couldn't help pushing. Is it really enough? Marcus studied her with unexpected intensity, and Claire felt exposed in a way board meetings had never achieved. What's this really about, Elena? I just think you deserve better, she said, meaning it with her entire soul. Better than what? Than being present for my son, than working alongside good people like you and Gloria, than having health insurance and steady paychecks. Marcus shook his head gently. I used to measure worth in titles and salaries. Then Lily got sick, and I learned what actually matters. This work isn't glamorous, but it's honest. And I get to go home every night knowing I did something real. That's more than I can say for some of my old colleagues who pushed paper around and called it innovation. The observation landed with uncomfortable accuracy. How much of Claire's empire building was substance versus performance? How many of her innovations genuinely improved lives versus simply extracting more profit? Before she could respond, Gloria appeared in the hallway, her expression troubled. Marcus, can I talk to you for a minute? They stepped away, voices low but urgent. Claire pretended to focus on making hospital corners while straining to hear. She caught fragments. Policy change, corporate memo, sick leave reduction. Marcus's face went carefully blank, the expression of someone absorbing a blow while refusing to show pain. When Gloria left, Claire approached cautiously. Everything okay? New corporate policy, Marcus said, his voice controlled but strained. Effective next month, sick leave caps at 3 days per year instead of 6. They're calling it attendance optimization. They're also adding a point system where calling out even with legitimate sick leave still counts against your record. Enough points trigger disciplinary action. Claire felt ice in her stomach. She'd approved that policy. Michael had presented it as industry standard adjustment to reduce absenteeism. The projected savings had been $17 million annually across all properties. She'd signed off without asking what it would cost in human terms. That's going to hurt a lot of people, Claire said, her voice barely above a whisper. It's going to destroy people, Marcus corrected, his composure cracking slightly. 3 days isn't enough when you have a kid. Children get sick. Schools send them home. There's no backup when you're a single parent. This policy essentially punishes people for having families. Can't you, I don't know, find other childcare solutions? Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. With what money, Elena? Daycare costs more than my rent. Emergency backup. Care costs $50 an hour. And Daniel doesn't need strangers when he's sick and scared. He needs his father. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion and frustration finally visible. I'm sorry, this isn't your problem. I'm tired. The admission felt monumental. In 4 days, Claire had never heard Marcus complain, never heard him express anything but determined optimism. Seeing him crack, even slightly, felt like watching a fundamental structure fail. It's not right, Claire said fiercely. The policy isn't right. Someone should fight it. Fight how? Marcus met her eyes, and Claire saw the weariness of someone who'd already lost too many battles. We're replaceable. The company has 100 applications for every opening. If we complain, they'll find reasons to let us go. Then Daniel loses his health insurance, and I can't let that happen. So we adapt. We survive. That's how it works. The resignation in his voice was worse than anger. Anger could be channeled, transformed. But this quiet acceptance of injustice, this knowledge that speaking up would only accelerate his own destruction, this was the sound of systems working exactly as designed. Claire Montgomery had designed this system. She had created policies that forced good people into impossible choices, had approved efficiency measures that treated humans as expenses to minimize, had built an empire on the principle that profit mattered more than the people generating it. The anonymous letter writer was right. She'd been blind to the consequences of her own success. That evening, Claire violated her own undercover rules. Instead of going home after shift, she followed Marcus at a careful distance as he rushed to pick up Daniel from after-school care, then headed to his night job at a downtown office building. She watched him greet his son with uncomplicated joy, despite obvious exhaustion. Watched him listen intently to Daniel's excited story about something that happened at recess. Watched him check homework while simultaneously eating a protein bar that would serve as dinner before his security shift began. The boy was beautiful. Dark hair like his father, bright eyes that held curiosity and intelligence. He chattered happily about his day, while Marcus listened with his whole attention, asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than parental obligation. "Dad, can we go to the aquarium this weekend?" Daniel asked hopefully. "My class is learning about ocean ecosystems and I want to see the octopus." Claire watched Marcus's face as he calculated costs he couldn't afford. "Maybe next month, buddy. We've got some bills to catch up on first." "That's okay," Daniel said with the cheerful resilience of children who'd learned not to expect too much. "We can go to the library instead. They have books about octopuses." "We'll definitely do the library," Marcus agreed, ruffling his son's hair. "And I'll see if I can pick up an extra security shift. Maybe we can make the aquarium work." An extra shift, on top of the 80 hours he already worked because his 7-year-old wanted to see an octopus. Claire turned away, her throat tight. She pulled out her phone and texted Michael, "The sick leave policy I approved last month, I want it reversed. That's a $17 million decision, Claire. Are you sure? What happened? I saw what it actually costs. Reverse it, okay? But the board will ask questions. What do I tell them?" Claire stared at her phone, at the question that revealed everything broken about her leadership. She'd built a company where human welfare had to be justified to shareholders as if compassion required a business case. "Tell them we're testing a new approach. I'll explain when I'm back." She couldn't explain, not yet, because she didn't fully understand what she was learning or where it would lead. But she knew with absolute certainty that policies forcing fathers to choose between being present for sick children and keeping their jobs could not stand, not in her company, not anymore. Over the following week, Claire's education in invisible work continued. She learned which managers covered for employees during family emergencies and which ones wrote people up for minor infractions. She learned about the housekeeper who worked despite chronic pain because she couldn't afford physical therapy, about the single mother juggling 3 part-time jobs because none offered full-time hours, about the older man supporting his disabled veteran son on wages that hadn't increased in 5 years. And she learned about Marcus. She learned that he volunteered to fix broken equipment rather than wait for maintenance, that he'd created an informal mentorship program for new housekeepers, that he kept emergency snacks in his locker for co-workers who couldn't afford lunch, that he'd once donated his own sick days before the policy change eliminated that option to a colleague facing a medical crisis. He was, Claire realized, everything a leader should be, He inspired through example rather than authority, built community through genuine care, maintained standards because of internal integrity rather than external pressure, and the system had made him invisible. On day 9, Claire experienced the cost of that invisibility firsthand. A guest in room 2015 had explicitly requested deep cleaning after complaining about allergies. Claire and Marcus worked together to ensure everything was perfect, wiped down every surface, vacuumed under furniture, changed air filters. 2 hours after they finished, the guest complained to the front desk about inadequate service, demanding compensation. The hotel manager, a man Claire had personally hired 3 years ago, came to the 20th floor to investigate. Richard Stevens was efficient, polished, and utterly indifferent to anything that didn't affect his quarterly bonus. Which housekeepers handled 2015? He demanded of Gloria. Marcus and Elena. They followed deep cleaning protocol exactly. The guest says otherwise. Write them both up. Richard, that's not fair, Gloria protested. I inspected the room myself. It was perfect. This guest has complained at 4 different hotels in the past month, always demanding refunds. I don't care about other hotels. I care about this guest threatening a negative review unless we comp their entire stay. Write up the staff or I'll find someone who will. Claire watched Marcus's jaw tighten, but he said nothing. Accepting blame for work he'd done perfectly because arguing would only make things worse. This was her hotel, her manager, her policy that staff could be written up based on guest complaints without investigation. Excuse me, Claire heard herself say. We followed every protocol. We can show you the checklist. Are you arguing with me? Richard's attention swung to her with the focused cruelty of someone who enjoyed exercising petty power. You've been here, 2 weeks? And you're already questioning management? Maybe housekeeping isn't a good fit for you. The threat hung in the air. Comply or face termination. Marcus stepped forward, his body language protective. Richard, Elena's right, but I take full responsibility. Write me up, not her. She's still learning, and I supervise the work. Fine. 1 write-up for Chen, and both of you are on notice. Richard turned to leave, then paused. And Marcus, this is your 3rd incident this quarter. 1 more, and we're looking at suspension or termination. Maybe think about whether this job is really working for you. After he left, silence filled the hallway. Claire stood frozen, rage and shame battling for dominance. Marcus had just absorbed discipline for perfect work to protect her, a woman he'd known for 9 days. Thank you, she managed, but you shouldn't have. Yes, I should have, Marcus interrupted gently. You need this job. You said you're rebuilding after losing your last position. I'm not going to let Richard destroy that because he's too lazy to actually investigate. He smiled without joy. I've survived Richard before. I'll survive him again. But 3 write-ups, I'll be more careful. Marcus began pushing his cart down the hallway, the conversation clearly over. Gloria caught Claire's arm. That was very brave and very stupid, she said quietly. Don't do it again. Richard isn't worth it. Marcus just sacrificed himself for me. How is that okay? It's not okay. Nothing about how this place runs is okay. Gloria's eyes held decades of accumulated injustice. But it's how things are, and fighting it just gets you hurt. Marcus learned that the hard way. You should learn from his example. Claire wanted to argue, wanted to reveal herself and fire Richard Stevens on the spot and fix everything wrong with systems that punished good people while rewarding petty tyrants. But she couldn't. Not yet. Not until she understood the full scope of what needed changing. That night, Claire pulled Richard Stevens's personnel file. What she found made her sick. Multiple complaints about discriminatory behavior, dismissed as personality conflicts. turnover of 68% in his department versus company average of 35%, explained as high standards. 3 lawsuits settled quietly by legal, sealed with NDAs. She had signed off on his promotion 8 months ago, based on his ability to cut costs and maintain occupancy rates. She had rewarded someone who achieved efficiency through cruelty. The pattern repeated across her company. Managers who met financial targets while destroying the people beneath them. Policies that looked reasonable on paper but became instruments of oppression in practice. Systems designed to maximize profit while treating human beings as disposable resources. Claire had built this, every single piece of it. And Marcus Chen, brilliant, kind, exhausted Marcus Chen, was drowning in the machine she'd created. The question that kept her awake that night wasn't whether to fix things. It was whether the fixing would come too late for the people already broken by her success. Day 12 brought revelation in unexpected form. Daniel's school called during Claire's shift. She was close enough to Marcus to hear the panic in his voice as he answered. "What do you mean he's running a fever of 104? No, I understand. I'll be there in, yes, I know, 20 minutes. Marcus ended the call, his face ashen. Gloria appeared immediately, maternal instinct apparently including telepathy. "Go," she said before he could speak. "Don't even think about the write-ups or Richard. Your son needs you." "But," I said, "go, Marcus, we'll handle it." Marcus grabbed his jacket, then hesitated, looking at Claire. "Elena, I'm sorry to leave you." "Go," Claire echoed Gloria's command. "Daniel needs his father, not an apology." She watched him sprint toward the service elevator, watched his terror for his child overcome every practical concern about job security or income or consequences. This was love, absolute, uncomplicated, world-reordering love. Claire returned to her work, but her mind stayed with Marcus. What happened when parents had to choose between sick children and employment? The 3-day sick leave policy she'd approved, reversed now but not quickly enough, would have made this moment even more devastating. 4 hours later, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It took her a moment to realize Marcus must have gotten her contact info from the employee directory. Daniel's okay. Flu, but manageable. "Thank you for covering for me. I owe you one." Marcus Claire stared at the message, at the casual gratitude for basic human decency, at the assumption that kindness created debt rather than simply being expected behavior. She texted back, "Don't ever thank me for doing what's right. Take care of your son." His response came immediately. "You're a good person, Elena. This job is lucky to have you." Claire set down her phone, her vision suddenly blurred. When was the last time someone had called her a good person? Not successful, not brilliant, not visionary, good. And the truth was, she wasn't. Claire Montgomery wasn't good. She'd prioritized profit over people for decades, had measured success in revenue rather than human flourishing, had built an empire that treated workers as expendable. But maybe Elena Russo could become someone better. Maybe this undercover experiment could evolve into something more meaningful than corporate intelligence gathering. Maybe she could learn to see what the anonymous letter writer wanted her to see. Not just the problems in her system, but the solutions walking invisible through her hotels, embodied in people like Marcus Chen who maintained humanity despite everything designed to crush it. The next morning, Daniel's fever broke, but school policy required 24 hours fever-free before return. Marcus showed up for his shift anyway, dead on his feet from a sleepless night of worry. "Marcus, go home," Gloria ordered immediately. "You're no good to anyone this exhausted." "I can't afford another day off," Marcus said quietly. "The write-ups, the new policy, I need to be here." "Then at least work light duty. Stock supplies, organize the storage rooms. Something where you won't hurt yourself if you zone out. Marcus agreed reluctantly. Claire watched him drift through the shift like a ghost, his normally precise movements clumsy with exhaustion. During lunch, he fell asleep at the break-room table mid-sandwich. The other housekeepers exchanged worried looks, but said nothing, letting him rest. This was community, people who understood that survival sometimes meant accepting help even when pride protested. Claire sat beside his sleeping form, studying his face. Even in rest, tension marked his features. His hands bore calluses and small scars from years of physical labor. His uniform showed careful mending, patches on patches, extending the life of clothing he couldn't afford to replace. This was what her company did to good people, extracted their labor, their time, their energy, their humanity, and offered in return barely enough to survive. And she had called this success. Marcus woke suddenly, disoriented and mortified. "Sorry, God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." "Relax," Claire said gently. "You needed the rest. No one minds." "Richard would mind." "Richard's not here." She handed him water from her own bottle. "When's the last time you slept more than 4 hours?" Marcus laughed weakly. "Define sleep." "That's what I thought." Claire made a decision that would have horrified CEO Claire, but felt completely right to Elena. "After shift, I'm going to Daniel's daycare with you. Then I'm staying with him so you can sleep." "Elena, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to. You've helped me every day since I started. Let me return the favor." Marcus's eyes went suspiciously bright. "Why are you being so kind?" "Because I'm realizing everything I've gotten wrong," Claire thought. "Because you're showing me what leadership actually means. Because I need to become someone worthy of the unearned goodness you keep offering." "Because it's right," she said simply. "And because you'd do the same for anyone here." Marcus didn't argue further, too exhausted to maintain his customary self-reliance. After their shift ended, Claire followed him to the small daycare center 8 blocks from the hotel. Daniel Chen was sitting in the sick room, looking miserable but brightening immediately when he saw his father. "Dad!" "Hey, buddy, how are you feeling?" "Better." Daniel hugged Marcus fiercely, then noticed Claire. "Who's that?" "This is my friend Elena. She works with me at the hotel. Elena, this is Daniel." "Hi, Daniel," Claire said, crouching to his level. "Your dad has told me a lot about you." "Really?" Daniel's eyes widened. "Good things?" "The best things. He says you're smart, funny, and kind. That you're his favorite person in the whole world." Daniel beamed, then looked at Marcus. "Can Elena come home with us?" "Actually," Claire said before Marcus could protest, "I was hoping to hang out with you this afternoon while your dad takes a nap. He's very tired from taking care of you last night." "Like a babysitter?" "Like a friend who wants to make sure you both get what you need." They walked to Marcus's apartment, a 15-minute journey that revealed more uncomfortable truths. The building was old, showing maintenance deferred too long. The neighborhood was loud, crowded, not particularly safe. This was what $60,000 a year purchased for a family of 2 in Seattle. Marcus's apartment was tiny. 1 bedroom he'd clearly given to Daniel, leaving himself the living room couch. But it was meticulously clean, decorated with Daniel's artwork and family photos that included a beautiful woman who must have been Lily. "Make yourself at home," Marcus said, embarrassment obvious. "It's not much." "It's wonderful," Claire interrupted honestly. "You've made it a real home." And he had. Despite poverty, despite exhaustion, despite loss, Marcus had created a space filled with love and care. Books overflowed from homemade shelves. Educational posters covered walls. A blanket fort in Daniel's room suggested a father who made time for imagination despite impossible schedules. This was what mattered. not square footage or luxury finishes or prestigious addresses. This was family. "Okay," Marcus said reluctantly. "My bedroom, Daniel's room, has everything he might need. Emergency numbers are on the fridge. He's had medicine, but he can have more at 3 if he still has fever, and—" "Marcus," Claire said gently, "I've got this. Sleep." He collapsed on the couch and was unconscious within seconds, his body finally claiming the rest it desperately needed. Claire spent the afternoon with Daniel, who turned out to be exactly as wonderful as Marcus had suggested. They read books about ocean ecosystems, built increasingly elaborate Lego structures, watched his favorite nature documentary, and talked. "Are you Dad's girlfriend?" Daniel asked with 7-year-old directness. "No," Claire said, surprised by the question. "Just his friend." "Oh." Daniel looked disappointed. "Dad needs a girlfriend. He's lonely." "How do you know he's lonely?" "Sometimes I wake up at night and hear him crying. He tries to be quiet, but I hear." Daniel's young face showed worry too sophisticated for his age. "I think he misses Mom." Claire's throat tightened. "I'm sure he does, but he has you, and you make him really happy. I try to be good so he doesn't have to worry, but sometimes I mess up and then he has to leave work and I feel bad." Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. "I heard him talking to Grandma on the phone. He said he doesn't know how much longer he can keep doing everything. What if he can't? What happens to me?" The fear in the child's eyes broke something fundamental in Claire's chest. This 7-year-old carried anxiety about his father's collapse, about his own security, about a precarious existence that could shatter at any moment, because her policies, her company's impossible demands, had created circumstances where a brilliant man worked himself to death, while his child worried about abandonment. "Your dad will be okay," Claire said, pulling Daniel into a hug, "and you'll be okay, I promise." It was a promise she had no authority to make as Elena Russo, but as Claire Montgomery, she could move mountains to make it true. She just had to figure out how to do it without destroying the fragile trust she'd built in this invisible world. Marcus woke 6 hours later, disoriented and guilty. "What time is it? Did I really sleep that long?" "You needed it," Claire said from the kitchen where she'd been helping Daniel with homework. "Feel better?" "I feel human." Marcus looked at Daniel, who waved cheerfully from the table. "Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect," Daniel announced. "Elena's really smart. She helped me understand my math problems, and we watched the octopus documentary twice, and she made grilled cheese that's almost as good as yours." Marcus met Claire's eyes across the small apartment, and something passed between them. Gratitude, certainly, but also something deeper. Recognition, maybe. The acknowledgement that they saw each other in ways few people did. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly, "for all of this, for being someone I can trust with what matters most." Claire wanted to tell him the truth, wanted to explain who she really was, and promised to fix everything broken in his life. But the words stuck behind the knowledge that revelation would destroy whatever this was. This moment of genuine human connection untainted by power dynamics or obligation. "You don't have to thank me," she said instead. "Friends help each other." "Is that what we are? Friends?" The question felt weighted with more than casual curiosity. Claire thought about the past 12 days, about the ways Marcus had taught her to see the world differently, about how his presence had become the most meaningful part of her days. "Yes," she said, "I think we are." Marcus smiled, the first truly relaxed, happy expression she'd seen on his face. "Good, because Daniel's right. I have been lonely. It's nice to have someone who—" He trailed off, but Claire understood what he couldn't articulate. "It was nice to have someone who saw you, who recognized your worth beyond your utility, who treated you as fully human rather than a function to perform." She had spent decades being seen only as CEO, as decision-maker, as source of approval or resources, had forgotten what it meant to be simply human in another person's presence. Marcus was teaching her that too. As Claire left that evening, Daniel hugged her goodbye with the unself-conscious affection of children. "Can you come back tomorrow?" "I'll see you at work," Claire said, looking at Marcus rather than Daniel. "I'll see both of you." Walking home to her Belltown penthouse, Claire felt the disorientation of living double. Elena's life had become more real, more meaningful than anything she'd experienced as Claire Montgomery in years. She was falling in love with invisibility, with the community she'd found in break rooms and service elevators, with the dignity of work done without recognition, with a man whose quiet heroism shamed every hollow achievement on her resume. And she was falling in love with Marcus Chen. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like waking up after a decades-long sleep, becoming human again after years of performing success. But the truth couldn't stay hidden forever. Eventually, Elena Russo would have to disappear, and Claire Montgomery would have to emerge from this experiment with decisions that would determine whether anything she'd learned could translate into actual change. The question haunting her as she entered her luxurious, empty penthouse was simple and impossible. Could she transform her empire without losing the man who'd taught her why it needed transformation? Could love and justice coexist when one required confession that would destroy the other? Tomorrow marked day 13 of 30. 17 days remained to find answers that seemed increasingly elusive. In her Belltown penthouse, Claire Montgomery stood at the window overlooking a city she'd conquered but never truly seen. Somewhere in those lights, Marcus Chen was putting his son to bed, probably reading the Octopus book one more time, demonstrating the kind of wealth that had nothing to do with money. And Claire, for the first time in her privileged life, understood what it meant to be poor in the ways that actually mattered. Day 28 arrived with the weight of approaching endings. Claire stood in room 2047, making hospital corners while Marcus hummed nearby. 3 weeks had transformed her, muscles harder, hands calloused, heart completely rearranged by the man working 2 doors down. "Elena?" Marcus appeared in her doorway, and the way he said her name, gentle, warm, intimate, made her ache with guilt. "Can we talk after shift?" Her heart hammered. "Of course." That afternoon, they sat in the break room after everyone else had left. Marcus's expression held nervous hope that Claire recognized with sinking dread. "These past few weeks having you in my life." He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "You've reminded me that I'm allowed to feel things besides exhaustion and responsibility. Daniel adores you. He took a breath. "I'm falling for you, Elena. I know it's fast, and I know I don't have much to offer, but—" "Stop." Claire pulled her hand away, tears burning. "Marcus, I need to tell you something." She couldn't do this anymore, couldn't accept his love while living a lie. "My real name is Claire Montgomery. I'm the CEO. I've been undercover for 28 days. The color drained from Marcus's face. "What?" "I got an anonymous letter about not knowing my employees, so I came here to see the truth." Words tumbled out desperately. "And I found you, and I've been changing policies, and I'm going to fix everything. You've been lying to me for a month." Marcus stood, backing away like she was dangerous. "Pretending to be my friend, getting close to my son, while secretly, what? Gathering intelligence? Feeling superior about how the poor people live?" "No, Marcus, everything I felt was real." "Was it? Was any of this real, or was I just some fascinating case study for you?" His voice broke. "Did you laugh about it with your executive team? The stupid housekeeper who fell for the billionaire playing dress-up?" "I fell for you too," Claire said desperately. That's why I'm telling you now, because I can't keep lying to someone I don't. Marcus held up his hand. Don't say it. You don't get to say it after this. He grabbed his jacket. I need to pick up Daniel. Stay away from us. Marcus, please. You want to fix things? Start by being honest about who you really are. He paused at the door. People like me aren't experiments. We're not poverty tourism. We're human beings trying to survive systems that people like you built. He left. Claire stood alone in the break room, her careful world collapsing. She'd learned everything the anonymous letter wanted her to see. Had fallen in love with the invisible man who'd shown her what actually mattered. But she'd done it through deception. And now the only person whose opinion she truly valued couldn't bear to look at her. The cost of her education, it turned out, was everything she'd discovered she actually wanted. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.